morning, everybody. We are in the boonies of Cleveland, Georgia, about 4 or 5 miles, I guess, sort of that way from Cleveland. That's the way we do it up here. Ahead of us, we have Yonah Mountain, and what I'm wanting to do this morning is have some fun doing the study of Yonah, what the light is doing on Yonah, and what the light is doing on the stuff in front of Yonah, and even behind Yonah, even though clouds are real quiet this morning, not much going on. So let's get started and see where we can go from here. So, blank canvas. First thing I want to do is to set the stage. Let's place Yonah, or let's place the whole composition. And so here, I'm going to be safe and use the rule of thirds. And so I guess maybe this is not the time to get risky or doing really far out exploring. So I'm going to play a lot of things safe. So rule of thirds, what does that mean? It means a third this way, 1/3, 2/3, 1/3 this way. Now, when we do that, we can also spot the center of the canvas, like right here. We can come halfway between the center of the canvas and the corner, any corner, and right there would fall in that range of rule of thirds. And so that's where the top of Yonah is going to be. Now, every mark I make now is going to determine how much of Yonah gets into the study. Whether it's going to be a wide angle study or whether it's going to be a closer study. And so let's see here, we got that little angle. I'm going to start getting rid of that mark and get rid of that mark, and let's do that a little bit better. Okay, so that little angle goes like sort of like that. Now, I come back up just a little bit with that angle and kind of go down a little bit more with it, down a little bit more. I'm going to take a little artistic license and kind of shorten that side of Yonah and be able to get just a tiny bit of that little mountain that goes up away from Yonah there. Now, typical of Yonah is that sort of crown that's on the top there. So I want to be sure to include that. I might say if we were 200 feet that way, then that angle would have been shorter anyway. So, all right. So I'm going to let's see, just sort of get this. You notice I'm kind of being a little bit careful here because I want to get this initial setup to interpret a lot about the mountain. So then that angle comes over and then it dips down a bit and then sort of sweeps down. Okay, and then doing that, I get more of a close-up view of Yonah. Now I have 1,000 different choices. You know, I could do a real wide angle view where I throw Yonah back in the distance and have all those little curves on either side of Yonah, and then get all that bunches of stuff in the trees and so on. My tendency is to go with whatever calls me to it first. And so I've been watching Yonah this morning as the sun's been coming up, and I'm watching what's happening to those shadows. And everybody who takes our video lessons knows how I am so in love with light and shadows. So the shadows and where the lights are hitting Yonah right now is what catches my attention, what interests me. So what will I do then with the tops of those trees? Now what I want to do is I come down here is I want to make kind of an interesting shape. Now I don't want this to be equal distance between here and here and here and here. So so I want to come down. Do I want to come down a little bit more, make it still more about Yonah? And I think so. That would be sort of a fun thing to do. And okay, so now what happens? Those trees are aligned about like that, and the line of the trees actually parallels that sweep of the mountain as it's coming down. Yeah, that's a little bit repetitive, so perhaps the thing to do is kind of interrupt those shapes a little bit and make that a little bit more interesting so as not to have those two parallel lines coming down. And also, so that we don't have too strong of a diagonal going this way, let's kind of level this out. And it sort of does, as you can see over, well, sort of on the side, but a part of doing a study is discovering. And a study is the attitude I want to take this morning, not doing a completed painting or a finished painting, but just a study. That means I am studying what's in front of me and you're studying that along with me. So, so that would be the tops of the trees and the way I might set them up on the study. All right, so I'm watching the composing process here, and I'm watching, there's a nice strong shape of sky there, and that's good, and the way the mountain's placed there, that's fine. So let's go back to that tree line, and you know what? That tree line is going to fall off the edge in this study. That's what I want it to do. Now, I don't want the tree line to end here at the top of the mountain, and so what I'll do is I'll bring that back just a little bit there, just a tiny bit, bring the top of this tree back, and those trees are kind of evenly shaped, and that, I think I'll give them a little bit of give them a little bit more shape. So I'm getting right in that mountain, right in like a bird's eye, almost a bird's eye view of that mountain. And then I see that there's a tree behind, and so we would drop down here to create, or to study that tree that's behind. Okay, now then we have way behind there, we have more trees, and so that would kind of lead us out of the study. And then we have some little trees in front. Now, you know what? It just might be a good idea to include those in the study as well. And let's see, where are they located? You know, well, I'm kind of don't know yet, so I'll just sort of let one of those trees run off the edge like that. Now, let's see, what do we have? So we don't really know what we have as far as shapes. We have three major shapes here, and they're a little bit equal in size. So as I move forward, I might need to correct that. So what I want to do now is my No 10, and those of you who study our video lessons know that the No 10 is finding the lights and the shadows. So mainly what we're doing is looking for the shadows and placing the shadows, so that then gives us a pattern that shows us how the lights and shadows distribute throughout the piece or throughout the scene. Now, the sun's going to change things, but we'll start out with an initial block in, or initial No 10 block in. I'm sticking with the green, and what I'll do is I'm going to come right down to the bottom of my palette and just make myself a real juicy mixture. Now, this won't be very dark. Normally I like to do the No 10s with a little Tombow pen, but that takes a lot of time, so I'm using the brush to do this just in the interest of time. So the first thing I'm noticing here is the shadow. Oh my goodness, that wonderful shadow there that is on Yonah. And that shadow is going to change on me. So what's happening with that shadow is it's coming down. It goes right over here. You know, and I like to squint so that I can read those shadows, but when I squint, that shadow is so close in value to the way the lights are hitting, it's almost not visible when you squint. All right, so then on this side, and then we have this the leveling of this ridge, and then on this side we have another really deep shadow that comes down like this. And so, and by the way, there's a tree in front of me right here that I'm trying to totally ignore. So so I'm going to throw that shadow in. Now, what does that give us? Let's just throw that shadow right in there. And so that is shadow. All that is shadow. Then if I look at these tree shapes, I'm seeing that they too, and I need to connect that shadow, they too have these shadow patterns that do something about like this. And I'm kind of thrown off just a little bit by the mark right there, but let's see here. Shadow pattern there, and see another shadow pattern here. And here I'm going to sort of be picking and choosing among those trees. as to which shadow patterns I use and exactly how I use them. And so there's a lot of shadow, lots of wonderful shadow here as we're coming down. And so I like having dark on the edge. So let's see now. That then gives us, all right, so got to go to these. We've got a real heavy shadow pattern right here. And now, what's going to happen there as we get further into the study, I don't know. But I'm going, for the moment, I'm going to throw that in shadow. Now I'm seeing that Yonah is bringing that shadow all the way down here, and there's more shadow that's popping up right in here. Oh, I see the shadow that's going down in here. Now what I want to look at now is as a shape of dark. How is that working as a shape of dark? And I want either more dark than light or more light than dark. And even though the sun is very bright today, I think I want it to lean more towards dark. I want the darks to be dominant. And what that means is, so I'm going to throw a little bit more shadow right up in here. So what that means is that dark could be interpreted from not just a dark black, but dark could be interpreted anywhere from values 10 to values 5, or about 5.5. All right, so that's okay. It's not the most exciting no-tan, but it's okay to get started, because after all, it's a study, and that shadow pattern is going to change. Now, if I had done several studies already and had a plan for a finished painting, I would work on this a lot more and get those darks a little bit more, get a more exciting value pattern with those darks. We're letting that do for now. Okay, I want to start with the sky because the sky gives that background, and there is absolutely nothing going on in the sky this morning. We're kind of hoping a few little clouds maybe do something for us back there, but there's absolutely nothing going on. Okay, so we'll deal with that. So I want to make that sky. The sky is very bright up there, very light, but I want to make that sky a little darker than I actually see it. Now, and those of you who study our video lessons know this. I like working, setting up the palette in a value line, where I have values that go from the darkest dark towards the lightest light, depending on what I'm doing with the study. So I think of this value I'm picking up right here in ultramarine blue and white. I'm thinking about that value as being sort of a mid value, a transition value, and I want to bring a tiny bit of green into that. I think I'll go over here into my viridian and bring a little bit of viridian into that to make that feel a little bit more like cerulean. Now let's see. You see that's very dark. So I'm going to lighten that up just a little bit. Well, that's more than a little bit. There we go, right there. And we want some variation in that too, because just because it's a blah, doing nothing, sitting there in sleeping type sky, doesn't mean that we have to make that kind of sky out of it. Let's see, I'm just testing that to see about color. All right, let me make a pretty good pile of that now. Throw some more of the green. I'm going to pull the green this time from my green pile. A little bit more like that, and a little bit more like this. Let's put some more of the white here. And now I want to get that. Okay, now to make that interesting, make the sky interesting, we need some variation. And so I'm going to move back and forth here. Let's see, between a warm and cool blue. Now what that means, cool means it has more blue in it in proportion to other colors. And warm means it has less blue in proportion to other colors. So you see, and if you can tell, if you can read that, if you can see that on the camera, but I've got that kind of variation in there. Now I'm going to reach up for a big hunk of white and throw just a little bit of a red, transparent oxide red in there. That's going to give me kind of kind of a gray, and let's just throw that in down here. And we throw that up. Well, let's see, I need to be sure that I don't lose the shape of the mountain as I throw that in. Now we see a little bit more light coming up right in here, and so I will just sort of set that in place. A little bit more light right in here. And a little bit more of that neutral color. And okay, now see, we got the variation, which is important. We get some variation in value, variation in color, variation in intensity. Those things mean a lot when we're working something that is not giving us anything specially. All right, so continue to work that. Now I'll get that somewhat blended, just somewhat blended. Just not completely blended. Now see, that will make it just a little bit more interesting. The sky, keep it from being quite the blunt sky I'm seeing this morning. So I'm coming over here now and giving that a little bit more light and a little bit more neutrality. Neutrality means I take the color away from it. You can, and those of you who might be a little less familiar with the language, we can neutralize colors by adding a complementary color. That means it's a color that is opposite on the color wheel. That's the easiest way of explaining it. And so you can neutralize those. Now, and throw some of that little neutral stuff up in here. Now that pretty much will set a stage, I think, that I can work with. A kind of lost my shape of the mountain, but that's okay. We'll deal with that. So we'll wash the brush here. That the sound that you hear behind us here is our generator. We're way out in the boonies where there is no electricity, and so we're having to generate the electricity, and so just ignore that. That's enabling you to see this. So I want to start with the shadows. I'm going to start with a mountain and come down, and I want to start with the shadows. Now, when I squint and I look at this shadowed area right here as compared with the sky, I look for what kind of contrast is that. Is it a strong contrast? Is it closer than a strong contrast, which will make it kind of moderate? Or is it barely contrasted at all? Well, it seems to me that it is a strong moderate contrast. So I'm going to start, I think that it would be called a low shadow. I think we could call that a shallow shadow, a shallow color. And I'm seeing it as a blue-gray, green blue-gray, sort of, other things happening. There is a rock face that's up there that is typical of Yonah. We can't see it very well, but now as the sun's beginning to change, it's beginning to show itself, so it may have to play a role in this too. Most folks who know Yonah won't recognize it as Yonah Mountain. So let me just start with that shadow. Now that would be, as I said before, that is a shallow shadow value, and you can tell that my palette is a neutral value palette. It is palette is the value 5, which is in between 10 and 1, and so when I put the colors down here, I can tell what their value is, or read their value more easily by comparing them to what's on my palette there. Now let's see what did I have there. Okay, I have that a little bit too purple maybe, and a little too, I have it almost right. So let's just start blocking in. I'm going to push, and I'm going to use that action of pushing the brush at the edge of a mountain or a hill like there where there are trees, and that will create that fuzzy edge that we see, because we don't see that as a hard edge in the distance there. We see it as a very fuzzy edge. Now as I'm doing this, I want to shape, and that shadow is actually dropping down. We're beginning to see more of the light of the mountain, and Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sort of set the shadow in place first without trying to be too definitive at first. And I want to pull that over. That shadow is kind of, it's taking on the shape, it's taking on the angle there. There are many shadows that are taking on the angle, and the shadow falls into this area right here, and it takes on more of the angle. Now when I get to this area right here, well, let's see, let me push that up just a little bit more, push it in just a little bit more right there, and give that a little bit more of a zig right in there. Okay, so then we come to that area where the other ridge intersects there, and so let's just quickly block that in. And pushing again. This kind of thing, even in a study or in a block end, if we do it initially, then we don't forget later to go back and soften those edges, and it's a better practice. So put that right there, and that shadow is dropping down like that. Okay, and the shadow goes right over in there. Gonna have to go back and remix, put some more mixes down. Now I'm using a very simple palette here, palette of colors, very simple, limited palette of colors this is a green that I created from Meridian and transparent oxide red, and it gives me more or less of a sap green. And I then raise the value of that with Rembrandt Yellow Ochre Light. And this one, of course, is ultramarine blue, and this is transparent oxide red. So when you use a limited palette like that, it makes it a lot easier to go back and find the colors that you mixed. So we need to vary the value of that shadow, and let's work with that just a little bit more. Get that. I told you it would change, and it is going to change, and it's going to continue to change. So what I like to do with those changes is not to establish a more or less a value of composition or the notan in the beginning and then stick to that. I like to go with the change and see where it takes me, especially when doing a study. It's a lot of fun to do that. So you start out, as the sun continues to move, things are going to change, and so we start out with what we see when we begin, and then as the sun moves and changes it, I will change it according to whatever the sun's doing there. And so there we go. And okay, so we have a good bit of shadow down there. I want to get in now just a little bit more of just the shadow work in here. I think I'd pull that all the way down, and for the composition's sake, we'll let that shadow run right off the edge there, right on into there. Okay, now, yeah, I think I'll go ahead and lay those shadows in for those trees, at least for the moment. Those are deep, kind of deep shadows. So I'll start out with the green, add the blue. The color of the trees is that kind of fall just before they turn deep green, which turns blue and turns more neutral. And so I'll start out and just do it sort of a blocking of that so that I can get the feeling of the thing going. I'm going to start with this one right here. Now I'm going to make this a lot darker than I see it for the moment. Just for the moment, I want to make that shadow of these trees just a lot darker than I see them. And now what we see is the back side of the shadow will negatively define the front side of the next tree. And so we sort of are looking at it with a double vision. The angle of light is sort of like this, and so the shadows are moving towards that angle of light. and I need to bring that all the way down. Now see, you'll see that I'll be making a few edits as I go along. I'm coming all the way to the bottom. I'm not including that hill. Maybe a little bit of it right back here. But these trees are ending about 2/3 of the way down, and so I want to keep that feeling of close up. All right, so now I go to this next group of trees over here, and I'm going to push that up just a little bit. The shadow area of that tree, I'm going to push that up just a little bit because I want a more interesting top line of the trees there than I see. And so now there, I'm going to be defining the tops of the trees behind them as I'm moving down. So I'm just going to move down kind of a little bit faster than this. So this, the initial block in of the shadows will pretty much guide the rest of the composition. I've got a bug riding my brush there. So now, all right, now these are coming sort of downhill, and this one's kind of forming the shape there. And you may or may not be able to keep up with which ones I'm working with, but it doesn't make any difference because I'm sort of picking and choosing anyway which ones I'll work with. So you might ask, well, why don't you mix enough paint to start with? I know that's the question I often ask myself. You know, sometimes you really don't know how much paint you're going to need when you start to work. Now, say, what do I want to do? Oh yeah, that needs to drop down. So there we go. Yeah. One part of me wishes I had decided to include the hill, and the other part says, go with what you've got. Don't argue with it. Just go with what you've got. All right. So I'm going to throw that shadow in like that, and that says 1, 2, 3, 4. Really need to communicate. They say that we need to have uneven numbers of things, and there's a reason for that because it does create more interest. But I have seen many exciting paintings that had even numbered things. So I think it's a matter of how the whole thing is composed as to how many numbers. But as I said earlier, we won't try to get too ambitious. Just sort of respond to nature and see what's going on. This is always the toughest part of any study or painting, is getting that initial plan set up, because everything else depends on it. Now, yes, I am going to include a portion of that ground, even though I said I wasn't, because we have some trees sitting in the distance back here, and I don't want to place too much emphasis on them right now because they are lighter in value. They are as aerial perspective goes. I'm going to fly way up that mountain. Right. As aerial perspective goes, those trees won't have as much definition as these trees will. Now, about the one sitting here, the first plein air study that we did, there was a last-minute edit that wasn't exactly the most exciting composition. So, for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and place the shadow of that tree there. Now, what I want, I think I'll just come right down and let that run off. Let it run off, and you can understand. I may or may not include that field, and so that would go on over like that. So that's sort of a kind of a rough in block in of the shadows. And what I'd like to do is to go in and begin to define a little bit about those shadows before I move on to the light.
Diane, we have a question from Deborah Roy Roberts. Which color blue is on your palette? Phthalo blue?
Ultramarine blue. It may look phthalo. Often they're translated.
It's the Gamblin ultramarine blue.
It's Gamblin ultramarine blue. Okie dokie. So yeah, that ultramarine blue, I've noticed it on our other videos, the ultramarine blue on the video, on the monitors will often look like phthalo blue. It looks a little greener than it actually is. Yeah, we're dealing with your monitors this morning too, as you know. We're dealing with how the monitors translate, and often sometimes the monitors are going to translate the color to be terrible, absolutely awful. I can't worry about that. I've got my own job to do, so just bear with me here and talk to your monitor. All right. So what I want to do is to look now at this I want to adjust those shadows just a little bit, and I want to look to see what variations I see in those shadows. Now, I'm going to move into my transparent oxide red and move it into the ultramarine blue. I'm going to do something here. Pull out a pretty good pile of the ultramarine blue right here, like that, and a little bit of the transparent oxide red that gives the green, a little bit of the green, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Just sort of play with it a little bit. Now we may, I'm beginning to see some fall colors up there too. So let's see how those will fit into those shadow areas. I'll pull some of this transparent oxide red down, and I guess some of that in my brush. Now let's see what happens here. Give this a little bit of variation. Just kind of roll the brush around. So now we get some modulation in the shadow areas. We get not just plain color, or not just color that represents shadow in the mountain, on the mountain, but we get a modulation that shows something of the colors that are actually there, and how the ambient light is affecting those colors. Reflected light that's reflecting down onto those shadows from the sky. So now let's see. I'm moving right up in here. Now here, I get that just a little bit more, just a little bit less precise right there. Let me move that over. Now, and then as those shadows begin to move over here, they begin to get lighter. Get just a little bit lighter, and they're beginning to transition right in here. Well, it's more light shining right here. Let's get push. And they're beginning to transition right in here into those not in shadow areas. And we see some stuff going up there. All right. Now what's happening right in here? The angle is becoming important here. The angle of the shadow is becoming important here. So you see what I'm doing there is I'm getting color modulation. What I'm seeing is that within those shadows, the way the light's reflecting back into them, we're beginning to see remnants of a grayish blue, grayish green, grayish blue, and even seeing a little bit of kind of a warm reddish color. But we don't want to. We want to be careful that in shadows that we don't get too much. Now that's too much. Good. Glad that happened. I'll just get rid of it. Yeah. That's it. So we don't want to mess with that too much. Now, okay. Now I want to move. I think what I'd like to do is to at least 2/3 get the essence of the mountain before moving down into the trees, because my study is about the mountain and that particular portion of the mountain. So I want to move now. So here's what happens on that side of the mountain. The sun's right straight ahead of me, looking at it right there through our canopy. So the sun hits the mountain. The mountain is a form, and where the sun hits it most directly, we would call the center light. And then where that light then moves kind of away around the mountain with the form, and that moves into what we call halftones. And then those halftones will meet the shadows. And where they meet the shadows, somebody named that the Terminator line. I don't particularly like that, but yeah, that's what we're stuck with, unless one of us comes up with something that everybody likes better. But anyway, So what we're looking at whenever we're looking at any form that is hit by direct light, we're looking at how the light changes the value as it moves, as light moves around the form, and then where it hits that shadow, how it changes the value. So this is what's happening, and what's happening up there is that it's pretty much all to the side of the sun. The sun's not shining directly on it, and it's pretty much to the side of the sun, and it's always in sort of halftones or low light. So the values are very close. Now we think of value contrast as being of three different kinds: the strong, where the darkest dark against the lightest light, and then the moderate, where it gets closer in value, not quite so dark, not quite so light, but still feeling of contrast. And then minor, it's kind of like the minor keys in music. The minor contrast, where you see just a bare value difference between one area and another, and that's what will happen there at that terminator line, where you see the low light transitioning into the shadow on the shallow side.
We have another question, Diane.
Yeah.
From Horst Hittenberger.
Yeah.
He says, sorry, Diane, I did not catch your explanation how you warm the sky color.
How I warm
red?
Huh?
With red?
Warm the sky color. Yeah.
Warm the sky.
Yeah. How I warm the sky color? I did it by neutralizing it. I took the ultramarine blue and I added more of the neutral, or more of the complement, which in this case is the transparent oxide red, which I had, of course, value corrected. So I was working with a mixture of the transparent oxide red and white at the same value as the blue I had mixed for the sky. And so if I let that get just a little bit warmer, or a little bit more in proportion of the transparent oxide red to the blue, that makes it warmer. So that's a good way to work that. Okay? All right, any more questions?
That's it right now.
Okie dokie. So we'll move forward. As my dean, when I was teaching at Piedmont College decades ago, my dean used to say, carry on. So let's carry on. All right, now I was talking about the light and the shadow. So what we do with that is we're working here in pretty much in the sky blue mixture, because the sky is reflecting on that. So that's a good place to start. Now, and I've got the blue still in my brush from the shadow side, so I don't have to really clean my brush. I don't advise that. That's kind of a dangerous thing to do, but it's the thing I often do, kind of to keep the harmony. Now we want a minor value relationship, and I explain to you why we want the minor value relationship. Now let's see, that's value. What's the color? What's happening in color on that mountain? Well, I'm beginning to see more and more warms, because as the sun moves higher into the sky, it's beginning to emphasize some of those colors that are changing. Aha! So we will want to keep, we want to be careful about there that we keep the value of those colors pretty much the same. So what I want to do, I lost my value line here, so I'll just do a little mixture right here. I want to reach back for my complement, the transparent oxide red that I'm using for complement. You could use any color for complement, it wouldn't matter. I like the transparent oxide red working in plein air, especially because it's neutral. So we don't have to do quite as much work when the color is already neutral. Now what I'll do here is, squint, get a mixture here, white into transparent oxide red, and I'm squinting here, and that's pretty close. Pretty close in value. We'll try it now. It's one thing on the palette, another thing when you put it on the painting. So I get here, let's load the brush there. I want to load the brush sort of scantily to begin with. I want to push a little bit of this color into. I don't want to mix that very thoroughly, not even mix it at all. Just sort of load them together. Now let's see what we can do here. I think that might be it. Now there's light shadow going on up there too, because those are trees, and even though the light's hitting the top of the trees, which is what we're most influenced by. There's light shadow, light shadow, light shadow going on, and so that's a good reason not to give strong brush strokes, but sort of let the brush kind of tease the color, tease the surface just a little bit. I'm seeing I'm seeing this happen all as it's coming down. It's just getting more and more of that as it's coming down that way. And let's go over here and let's see what's going on the other side. As I'm squinting, and I'll just kind of push. And here I want to kind of reshape just a little bit, and I also want to reshape the top because I almost lost that characteristic top that Yonah has. Now blend that down into the color as I reshape it, and I need to carry that. I just spotted something, and this is the beauty of painting, is that you can always spot something and change it. That little characteristic shape I'm talking about needs to go further over this way. There we go, right there, and then she dips down right like this. There we go. Okay, and then we do now I'm going back to the light. Oh wow. Okay, so there is minor value relationship, as you can see there. What we perceive as being in light is just barely a value darker than what we see to be in shadow, and all that is light as compared with the shadows we see in front, because there's lots of haze on the mountain this morning. Alright, so once again, paying attention to the value. I'm loading those two colors, the mixture of transparent oxide red and a mixture of gray blue, and what I want to do is kind of dance them around on the canvas, push them up against the sky, and I need to go back for a little bit more shadow area right in here. Push that up against the sky and sort of let that work like that as it's coming down. So it requires constant study. It requires constantly looking at the subject and seeing what the subject's done between the time that you looked at it last time and looked down at your palette. Because the beauty of this whole plein air thing is that it changes in a split second sometimes. Things will change, and if you're taking the approach where you're following the change, I call it chasing light, where you're following the change rather than trying to stick to a plan that you set up in the beginning, then you gotta look at it anew every single time. You gotta look at it as if you've never seen it before. Otherwise, things will go out of whack. Now is the time to kind of work back and forth between light shadow, because that's what I'm seeing going on up here, and it's that minor value relationship. It's changing in hue, very slight change in value, and then this comes across on it like that. All right, so now what are we seeing going on over here? Oh dear, yeah, I'm seeing some greens pop through. Now, so just because I said green doesn't mean I reach for my pile of green and plop it up there. What kind of green is it? I'm seeing it as, I'm seeing kind of a blue neutral green. And I'm seeing that in the ambient light, and it's popping up, and it's actually moving at an angle, and I need it a little bit lighter than that, because I fell into the shadow value there. So let's go back and reload that, and let's see here. Oh yes, there we go, march it across, and get it blended, because it does make that transition. So I'll just take the brush and with the paint that's on the brush, I'll continue to blend it as it goes across. All right, and now I'm seeing the same thing happen over here. It's all changing. The light's beginning to kind of climb down that mountain right there. Let's see here. And they get a little dip of shadow there, and he's climbing down the mountain, and So one of these days, if I'm lucky, I'll get as fast as the sun. Oh, but that wouldn't be today. Okay, transition value. That's the shallow shadow value. Shadow value for where the shadows are, and the low light value for where the lights are. For where it's in shadow and not in shadow. You see how that in shadow and not in shadow thing becomes so handy. Now what I'm seeing happen, is that this little booger head's taking on more shadow. It's gotten darker. Alright, so let's chase that around for a little while. And here, a little darker. And there. Okay, now I'm going to go back over here because this one has gotten darker too. Just a little bit. Shadows do get deeper, and that changes the value relationship. Let me get those colors a little bit darker here than I really want them, so then I can control that value. All right, right in here, it's a little bit darker. Right in here, a little bit darker than I saw it in the beginning, and that changes that value relationship from minor to moderate right in here. Let's pull that on down. Okay, let's see. And then as we go back over here, we don't want to neglect that. So all this in here, we don't. These lines of trees are so close together, we don't really see the mountain in those. So I can come right down to them, and let's get that and see a little bit more light. A little bit more light. As I'm squinting, more light popping in here. More light popping in here. In here, in here, in here. Now watch the angle that it comes down the mountain as it's popping in there. And I'm seeing a little bit more definition of trees up there because the light's changing. So that's fun. So I want to move over here though, and come back. Remember, we're studying. It's a study. It's chasing the light, and it's not going to be a finished painting. It's going to be a research. It was almost like if you were going out in the field as an archaeologist and you're digging up the earth, you don't know what's underneath it. You're studying it to find out. All right, so right here, I'm going to sort of begin to kind of roll the brush in this direction because I'm seeing that light go uphill like that. Just roll it right down like that. Now, with the shadow portion of it, let's roll it let's roll it a little bit more like this and a little bit more like here. The shadow gets it's getting deeper as it's coming down here, so that contrast gets closer. The contrast between the shadow and the not in shadow side of the mountain gets not closer, gets more, starts becoming more and more moderate as it moves down the mountain here. And so now see, lots of light. I'm going to go ahead and throw all that in shadow first, and then I'm going to come down and kind of roll that light into it. Okay. Now I'm going to wash the brush, which is probably a pretty good thing to do from time to time. It doesn't hurt. Or rinse it rather. And now I want to go back and examine those in shadow or not in shadow areas right in here, and that is low light. I'm going to start here with the green not in shadow area. That is a low light value. I'll put it right here. Let's scoop up a good bit of this stuff. That's not it. Let's add some more of this to it. There we go. Okay. That's a low light value right there. I can tell it's low light because when I squint at it against the palette, I can barely see the two together. Now,
I'm going to go back into the ultramarine blue. Yeah, that's a cool green I'm looking at there, where I'm seeing those tops. I'm going back into the ultramarine blue and white. Don't want that thoroughly mixed at all. Let's see what happens then. Is that close to the light? That's close to the light that I'm seeing. The green, that greenish light that I'm seeing as it rolls down that mountainside, right in there. And as it rolls up the mountainside, it gets lighter as it goes up. Let's put just a little bit more white in it because it gets lighter as it goes up. And up here, there's not that much green popping through up here, but we're seeing those hints of green. It's all like in this area right here. Now it's almost lost that shadow relationship in there when I'm doing that. So I need to go back and roll that back in. All right, in here too. Now I need to get that shallow shadow that I'm seeing there, and that's not it. And that's not it. Yeah, that's it. That's the blue and the green. The two mixtures, blue and the green. Adding a little bit of the transparent oxide red back. Got too much of that. Blue and the green here. Now I'll move it right over in here, and let's get that a little bit bluer. Looking out there at this very low intensity blue. Now, want shallow shadow. Shallow shadow will be just a little bit darker than my palette. Yeah, that's how I know those things. Yeah. Touch, just a hint, a touch of alizarin crimson in there because I'm beginning to see some purples. All right, that may be it. Yes, the shallow shadow as it's coming down that hill. You see, when you keep that contrast relationship as a minor contrast relationship, it then will communicate. If you see minor contrast, then paint minor contrast, and it will communicate whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. Now, let's just go back into the light. This right here. Lose my place because that mountain. My eyes will dance all over the mountain if I'm not careful. All right, so we have a little bit more light that's coming right down the ridge. The ridge is behind over here. A little bit more light dancing behind that ridge. So, all right, now I want to move to the trees in front because they do. Wait a minute, I got this. I'm seeing some more stuff here. I'm seeing the lights of these trees kind of poking up here. But I want to move to those trees in front, and what I want to do, first of all, I've already set for what I said would be the in shadow area of the trees, and we see some really strong contrast on those trees. So that's probably where the major contrast in the whole study is going to be. And so first of all, what I'll do, read the color and the value of the light or the not in shadow portion I'm seeing. And of course it reads to me as being green, but it reads to me as being a kind of a yellowish green. So I'm going to pull the yellow ochre light, and it also reads to me as being kind of almost a little bit more towards neutral. That's not it right there. Of course, that's still the dark mixture of it. But I'm going to go into the light portion. Let's see if that's it. The light portion of the transparent oxide red, and pull that into it. And see now, will that give me what? No. Well, okay. What I want to do now is I'm squinting and looking at the light that's on these trees, and what is the value relationship between that light and the area behind it. It's a little bit more intense, but it's the same value. So there you go. That means that I need it a little bit more intense than I've got it. So I need to reach over for the green. I'm going to reach in for a little hint of yellow light here. It's a little bit more intense, but Okay, let's see. Will that do it? Will that be it? In part. In part. There's some variation there. So some of the area is a little bit lighter, and some. So it's a combination of sort of low light there because right at the edge there, and then we see that like that. As the light moves inward, it becomes a little bit darker. So let's just sort of form that, and I'm going to pull it all the way down and let that. I'm going to cut that. That tree's going to go off the edge of the page, edge of the canvas. Now that's what I'm thinking now. I didn't originally think that. I want to go over now for the middle value of that and catch the middle value of the green and pull that in and kind of shape that accordingly. Okay, we see some more of that light, so I'm working back and forth. Light bow here, light bow here, and then get a little bit darker right in here. It doesn't have the presence I want it to have, so I just do a little bit of my editing here. I want to get a little bit more value contrast right in here. I lost part of that value of contrast. This is deep shadow. That deep shadow area, kind of lost that, and right in here. And there's some deep shadow area as it's going to the bottom of that. I think I'll just shape these first, and then go back and see what happens. All right, we have the same thing in this next one. So I need that low light, but I need it a relatively, not too high intensity, but higher intensity than I think. I'm not real happy with how this works. It's got more light over there. It's got more shaky there too. So this one, oh, I made that too high. Oh dear. All right, well, live with it. Live with it for the moment, and I'm not going to go out back and change it right now. Okay, just going to throw this in. And come over here. Quit being quite so meticulous and just throw those general values in first. Here, that, and back here is what I really can't see what's going on back there, but I'm just going to follow that same pattern. I'm going to let the light of that get a little bit darker as it goes towards the edge. So we have light in here. And then I'm letting those go off. I have to really watch what I'm doing here, because my tendency is to see the bottoms of those trees, and I wanted them to go off the edge. And so as the study goes, I have to be sure that as I'm looking, I'm cutting that off in my mind or in my eyes at the bottom there. Where that's a little bit better right there. Let's get a little bit more of the shallow area. This kind of may just end up leaving those at a block-in stage there for the moment. Now what's happening on the other side? And the single tree is just sort of just it's on the shadow side in here. It's kind of a straggly little fellow. He's showing the shadow side. Not that straggly little fellow. And just get a little bit deeper shadow right in here. Not quite like that. Let's let a little bit more light here. Now, I'm going to let that little fella go right off the page, right off the canvas, right in there, and just close that in right there. Have some of that mountain showing through there. Go here. This is the contrast as it comes down. Now, what's happening here, or what we're seeing, is that distant trees and that hill, and we're showing very little of that hill, and I just want to throw that in. That ends up being about it's very light value, and it's kind of a greeny, neutral greeny right here. All right, so it's going uphill like this, and then I'm going to put it right over in here and let it kind of encroach just a little bit into these trees, and encroach just a little bit here. There's another hill that kind of comes down in front here, so let's go ahead. Maybe we'll have to give that a little bit more context to the scene if we do it that way, and we have a little bit of that. All right, let's see if I cut that off with my hand. It's okay, not perfect, but okay. Now I'm going to go into some middle value mixtures. I'll go back into these mixtures right here, the middle value, but I want those to feel a little bit more green and indicate these little guys right back in here. The values back there, all that value begins to look pretty much the same. So they need to have deeper feet. So let's see what I can do about that. Right in here, and pull that up just a little bit like that. Now I want to look for that sort of thing as I go through here. We need the contrast in the front. We need to have a little bit more of that contrast in front. So let's see what we can do here to get that. And a little bit more contrast right here. I need to clean the brush a little bit. It's getting a little bit ragged, so just kind of pull it just a little bit, and throw just a little bit more like kind of contrast in there so that we can read it. So those shadows are becoming more prominent than they were initially. They're becoming more shadow, less not in shadow, is what I'm trying to say. Right in here. And I'm trying to pick up on that. More shadow, less. Remember what we're doing? We're chasing light. Chasing light also means we're chasing shadow. Because you can't have, well, yes you can too. But you can't see without shadow. If it were all light, you wouldn't be able to see anything. Just as if it were all shadow, you wouldn't be able to see anything. All right, now I'm a little bit unhappy with that, with the line of trees there. And I think maybe I'm just going to kind of leave that line of trees. Now, one thing I'm noticing, I did not notice that when I first started out, but as I stand back what I'm noticing is I've lost the shape. I've lost that characteristic shape of the mountain in my searching for shadows and not in shadows, and you know, so many things to look at one time. So let's see what we can do about that. This sort of, I'm just going to shorten that up. That needs to be a little bit lighter. That's more of a, now it's falling more into light up there. So a little bit lighter, and that contrast against the sky is moderate. And that little area moves down like that. And see, the whole, I can't lose sight of my intention here. My intention was to study the mountain and what was happening to the light on the mountain, and not to study the trees. Okay, let's get that. Now that kind of dips down a little bit. Let's see, now that's a little bit closer to what I'm feeling. There's that tree that's in front of me. I don't know if y'all can see. You're getting a little bit different view than I've got. It's this little bitty straggly tree right here in front of me, and it's not allowing me to see everything that I want to see. But what I do want to do is to emphasize those shadows again, because they've taken on another character. So let's go back into my in-shadow color here, and what I want to do here, I'm going to catch a little bit more shadow right in here, and sort of let that transition, catch that little shadow a little bit more right in here as it comes downhill, and watch the angle at which it falls. I feel I need a little bit more blue, purple. Now I think what we really need back there is more of the green. I'm looking at color harmony. I think what we really need in here is more of the green. So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's find in here what are we seeing. And we want that to harmonize. Now what I'm seeing is that there's a stronger contrast behind that mountain than I initially read. When I was first doing these trees, the frontal trees, I read the contrast as being, the value contrast as being pretty much the same. I'm beginning to see things happen back there, that things have kind of changed a little bit. So that's gotten a little darker back there. And let's do that. See, that's what I mean by chasing light. Let's see here. That's not quite dark, and not much. It doesn't need to be much at all. Let's check that. Let's check it out. Let's see if that value will do it. See if that will do it right there, where I'm seeing that. I need to get lighter. Lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter, darker. So goes the life of an artist. It always is lighter, darker, lighter, darker. Usually it's darker. This time it's lighter, lighter, darker. Let's see here, right in here. Now that feels more like it. More like that character that I'm reading right in there. Feels more like it. The other thing you have to, or I have to watch, and I don't know whether it's unique to me or whatever, but what I have to watch is sometimes you can look at a scene so long that you can no longer see it. And I do that sometimes. I start reaching a point where I'm not quite sure what I'm seeing. This happens to all of us. That's the reason we need to get away from it. It's not a good idea just to stand in front of a painting for 2, 3, 4 hours and just keep going, because you need, your body, your eyes need that rest. Your system, your soul needs that rest. We need to move away from it and then come back to it with fresh eyes. Otherwise we could end up just painting willy-nilly and not really doing anything meaningful. One thing I do want to do right over here, and I'm getting right in this area right here. That was much lighter when I started, and now it's gone darker. And I don't like the lightest light going off the edge. I like to have a dark at the edge in order to blot the eye, bring the eye back. And so what I want to do there is to, let's just see where, so let's do that. Let's just give that a little bit of shadow, of feeling that there's a little more light shadow. And I'm also going to kind of throw that at an angle upward just a little bit there, to keep the whole angle or the whole feeling of the piece from going just in one direction and falling off the edge. So we'll do that. So I'm getting very close to feeling like, as far as the study of the mountain, and also the time that we've allotted for the session, I might be where, just about at a good stopping place, maybe not quite necessarily. I'm not happy with this right here. Not happy with right there. Well, lo and behold, has the light not changed on me again right over there? Well, alright, I'll play that game. Have just maybe a few more minutes, and let me just play that game. Before I do, though, I want to just sort of stand back a little bit and see. There's a butterfly, orange butterfly. Neat. All right. Back into the light. Back into the cool, keeping it as a not in shadow mixture. Back into the warm. Let's see if this is going to be too much. And as it's coming down right here, it has even more warmth. Changed again. Oh dear, yeah. So what's happening there, what's happened there is the shapes of the light have changed. Totally. Look at that. Look at that, how the shapes of the light has changed. Lost the shadow. I'll go back over here. Get a different brush. I have to keep looking at that shadow. That deep shadow there now has gone a little deeper. The question is, did it go deeper? Or did the relationship of the study take it deeper? And that keeps being that misty gray. And that keeps being that darker. Just a little bit more here. A little bit bluer. A little bit cooler. Let's do a little bit of a fine tuning there of that shadow. Right there. Now look what's happening. It's crawling. It's crawling right up there. It's crawling around that rock. Right there. It's crawling down. It's crawling here. There. Crawling over here. Crawling that way over there. There's more of it coming in here. And then we have some more of the deeper shadow popping in here. Let's go back to this brush. Right in here. More of the deeper shadow popping in here. Chasing that light. And we can keep chasing it. Now what I want to do now is I'm just going to kind of step back and see where it is now, or is where it is now, a place where I can feel good about leaving it. And step back and see. I do want those darks to relate just a little bit more to each other. This is sort of a composing thing, but I want these darks to come in and join these darks right in here. Just a little bit more. This shadow, doing the same thing, but I don't want it to compete with this one, so I'm not going to make it quite, not going to darken it quite that much more. Let's see. Have I studied? Have I discovered? Have I chased? What I'm seeing, before I close this out, what I'm seeing is an inconsistency between the color of the sky and everything else. And so, and that can happen when you're not paying attention to the sky, which I was after I got it blocked in. I wasn't really giving it any more attention. All I need to do there is to pull some neutrals into it. Now, this is a really a little technical thing you can do. And I'm saying neutrals because there are so many neutrals in here. But if a sky goes south, or the sky towards the end of a study, if the sky ends up not being in harmony, in color harmony with everything else, then you can take neutrals and throw neutrals in there. In this case, it needs to be warmed up because, let me just get that right here like that. It needs to be warmed up because the sky is too cool. My sky, this sky here, is too cool now for everything else. It's just out of harmony. So I'm pulling some warm into it. Let's get some, watching the values change, pulling some warm into it. I may not have to pull warm over the whole thing. Certainly don't have to paint the whole thing again. And I need more of the warm over here too. So that makes it a little bit more harmonious. Now let's see, is there any other little tweaking like that I wish I had done? Throw a little bit more light in the sky right here and just gradiate it out. That makes a little bit more sense for the light that's coming over the hill. I'm going to leave that alone right there. Okay, I feel better about the sky being harmonious there. Well, I do want to get these edges a little bit more fuzzy. A little bit more, not much more. And just I'm going to reach for my floppy brush here, and I want to add just some real contrasty darks toward the bottom there, because I think as far as contrast, it doesn't have it. Now, I gave myself an out when I said we would do a study, and that's what we can do, because when we're doing a study, we don't have to. Well, composition should always be a part of it, because we are studying composition as well as the scene. But if this weren't being broadcast, I might stop without being concerned with creating darker structures down there to give us a little bit more contrast, value contrast, give the whole thing a little bit more zip. You know, that's a term people use these days. Not zip, what did it say? Pop. I don't know. There's lots of lingo out there that I don't try to keep up with, because the minute you learn it, it's going to change to something else anyway. So, let's see. That gives that a little bit more. It gives it kind of a little pull into it. That's good. A bit more there. Alrighty. Take one more look and see. Is there anything else? Oh, I see. I see something back here that I probably could make use of. And that is, I'm seeing behind that tree, I'm seeing a tree running in real deep shadow on that side. And I think that might serve the piece very well. Also tells me that the deep shadow, real deep shadow, I need to look for more of. And so I'm seeing more deep shadow right up in here. That can help. More deep shadow right in here in the bottom of these trees as they go off the page. And there. I'll stand back. Let's see. Well, what do we think? As a study where my intention was simply to chase light and allow you to watch me as I'm chasing light, perhaps that's a good place to stop. So, hope you had fun. I did. This was a real tricker, where every time, well, like it always happens when we're out painting in plein air, or whatever we're doing, whether our intention is to paint a finished painting or to do a study, we're always chasing that light. That light's always changing things. And so what we need to do is to take the attitude of relax, let it happen. If what turns out happens to be mediocre or, you know, ends up in the trash, that's not what counts. What counts is the experience, and the fact of doing this and having this experience, we have fed the artist within, and that's where we're going. That's what counts. That's what always counts. It's not about what other people think. It's not about following a trend or trying to keep up with our peers. It's about what happens in here, what happens to us as individual artists, and how we continue to do things to grow ourselves so that we can make our unique artistic expression whenever we want to. So I'll stop with the philosophizing there. It didn't do much during the study. Had to get a little bit in. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you had as much fun as I did. Bye now.